Rip Van Winkle, Part 3. So remember that we'll read through the sections together, and then I'll go back and do sort of a translation for you. Certain it is that he was a great favorite among all the good wives of the village, who, as usual with the amiable sex, took his part in all family squabbles, and never failed, whenever they talked those matters over in their evening gossipings, to lay all the blame on Dom Van Winkle. The children of the village, too, would shout with joy whenever he approached. He assisted at their sports, made their playthings, taught them to fly kites and shoot marbles, and told them long stories of ghosts, witches, and Indians. Whenever he went dodging about the village, he was surrounded by a troop of them, hanging on his skirts, clambering on his back, and playing 1,000 tricks on him with impunity, and not a dog would bark at him throughout the neighborhood. The great error in Rip's composition was an insuperable aversion to all kinds of profitable labor. It could not be from the want of assiduity or perseverance, for he would sit on a wet rock with a rod as long and heavy as a Tartar's lance and fish all day without a murmur, even though he should not be encouraged by a single nibble. He would carry a fowling piece on his shoulder for hours together, trudging through woods and swamps and up hill and down dale to shoot a few squirrels or wild pigeons. He would never refuse to assist a neighbor even in the roughest toil, and was a foremost man at all country frolics for husking Indian corn or building stone fences. The women of the village, too, used to employ him to run their errands, and to do such little odd jobs as their less obliging husbands would not do for them. In a word, Rip was ready to attend to anybody's business but his own. But as for doing family duty and keeping his farm in order, he found it impossible. In fact, he declared it was of no use to work on his farm. It was the most pestilent little piece of ground in the whole country. Everything about it went wrong, and would go wrong, in spite of him. His fences were continually falling to pieces. His cow would either go astray or get among the cabbages. Weeds were sure to grow quicker in his fields than anywhere else. The rain always made a point of settling in just as he had some outdoor work to do, so that though his patrimonial estate had dwindled away under his management acre by acre, until there was little more left than a mere patch of Indian corn and potatoes, yet it was the worst conditioned farm in the neighborhood. Okay, so here we are. Now again, very important to have a sense for vocab, and I've created a vocabulary list. It's on the portal for number 3, section number 3. There are about 12 words that, there may be some that you know, some that you don't. There may be a few more that you're unfamiliar with, or a few from this list that you do understand. So it's important to have a good sense of vocabulary as you're reading this or any other story. So here Washington Irving is talking about Rip Van Winkle. He's giving us a really great description of what is clearly a really nice guy who just doesn't like to work hard on his own farm. And yet, you have to wonder, there's a lot of talk here about his wife, and it seems that she's really hard on him and that he just doesn't take to that at all. It's almost as if he sounds like he's avoiding work, right? So here it is. He's a great favorite among, all the wives of the village, who, as usual, among the amiable sex, the kinder, more friendly sex, took his part in all family squabbles, right? In all the quarrels of the family. Oh, Rip, your wife is so hard on you. And never failed, whenever they talked those matters over in the evenings when they're gossiping, to blame the Dom Van Winkle, to blame his wife for everything. The kids around the village thought he was awesome. He helped them with, sports. He built kites for them, shooting marbles with them. They would climb all over him. This is nice. I like this sentence here. Whenever he went dodging about the village, he was surrounded by a troop of them, hanging on his skirts, clambering on his back, and playing 1,000 tricks on him with impunity. And not a dog would bark at him throughout the neighborhood. So again, if you're unfamiliar with language, with a vocab term, well, what you need to do is you need to use the resources that we have, and you get right there. Impunity means exemption from punishment or loss or escape from fines, right? So we can go right back to the work that we're doing, and we can say, okay, so that he would go about and they would hang on and playing 1,000 tricks on him without being punished. So that the kids of the neighborhood and of the village loved to play tricks on him because he went along with it. They wouldn't get in trouble, right? So they could do tricks on him with impunity, without being punished. The great error in his composition was this terrible aversion to all kinds of profitable labor. Insuperable, it means like you can't overcome it. It's too hard to overcome. It's just too powerful. And it's interesting, like the great error in his composition, like his character, is that he can't work for money. He can't do a job that he has to do. He's really great at doing stuff that he likes to do, and he works hard at the stuff he likes to do, right? Because it would not be for want of assiduity or perseverance, right? He's very assiduous and he perseveres in the stuff that he likes to do. He'll sit with his fishing rod as heavy as a Tartar's lance. There's a nice example of simile. A Tartar, right? A warrior's lance, and he'll sit there all day long without saying anything, without a murmur, without a whisper. Even if a fish hasn't even nibbled on his rod, he would carry his rifle on his shoulder for hours, trudging through the woods, over hills, just to shoot a few squirrels and pigeons. But that's because he likes to do it. He likes to assist his neighbors even in the most difficult things, right? And he goes to the local country frolics. These are like the country fairs, and he husks corn and builds stone fences. He does all of the things, either for other people or that he enjoys doing. But when it comes to, it's essentially Washington Irving sums up the paragraph by saying, look, in a word, Rip was ready to attend to anybody's business but his own. But as for doing his own family business around his own farm, he found it impossible, right? So we get this image now, as a matter of fact, in fact, he declared it was of no use to work on his farm at all. It was a pestilent, it was a diseased little piece of ground. And there was no reason to work on it because, either the fences were falling down or his cow would go into the cabbages or the weeds were always quicker to grow in his field than anywhere else's. And this whole paragraph here describes sort of what it is, the excuses that Rip would use for not doing work on his own farm. Now, we have to go back to the foreshadowing of Rip's relationship with his wife to think, part of his just dismay is with the relationship he has with his wife, he's constantly being badgered. He's constantly being berated. He can't do anything right. With everybody else in town, all he does is right? Life is fabulous because, the dogs don't bark at him. The kids love him because they can play tricks on him with impunity. They don't get in trouble for the tricks. The wives of the village have him do errands and he does them. Even earlier in the story, back in part 2 of the story, we got this sense that, that he deferred to everybody. He was very kind. Anybody said anything, he would never argue with them. It was almost like he was this spineless soul that everybody in the village liked because he never fought back, right? He was never fighting back. Okay, end of part 3.